Welcome to Constructive, a podcast about construction, technology, and whatever else comes up. Hope you enjoy. I found you because of Todd Wynn, who is one of my favorites, but you're just working at a place where I'm super interested in how we're using technology as an industry, and RO feels like they're on the cutting edge. And so I bet you have a lot of fun stuff to talk about how you guys are using technology, but go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Yeah, Trevor Owen, and I'm the reality capture manager here at Rogers Obrien. It's a newly created role and team this year. Happy to be a part of RO, and like you, I've also been following Rogers Obrien for many years. Todd and I developed our friendship back in about 2015, 2016, and just kept in touch over the years, bumped into each other, caught up at different conferences, as well as Joe Williams. Him and Todd were co-founders of Project Atlas many years ago, and just got to know them really well, and thus by proxy got to know Rogers Obrien. And but I'm no stranger to construction. I've been in the industry for about 18 years. Started in a hot and humid warehouse at an electrical contractor during the summer after I graduated high school. I was bussing tables, and my dad, who was in electrical sales for over 20 years, called on this account. And he said, "Hey, I know this company needs some summer help, and they'll start you off at $10 an hour." I was like, "Deal."
Right.
Because I was busting tables for $5.25 an hour, and so when I heard $10 an hour, let's do it. And I was actually going to school for movie industry to be a producer or editor. I worked on a feature film, but it was right around the writer's strike, and I don't think it has ever come out. But really had a passion for creating something out of nothing with people. I minored in music. I played French horn from junior high, and I got a scholarship at college, and so I played all through college. So, I enjoyed creating music with other people. I enjoy creating movies with other people. And I think that's what drew me to construction, is because you're creating something out of nothing with people, and it's different every time. And I can see that too when I come across people who have like a music background or a theater background. It's you can just tell they have that thing about them that they're able to maybe listen to others a little bit better, because you have to do that in music. If you want to create a better product, you have to listen to other people's sound. And over the years, like the leadership of that contractor was like, "Hey, if you change your major to something more in line with what we're doing, we'll maybe bring you in and kind of train you up on the different parts of our business." I'm like, "Okay." Because at the time was the writer's strike, and I saw how unstable the industry was for the movie industry. I was like, "Okay, let's just make where we'll always need construction and buildings built." And so that's what got me to construction, was just making more money was at the restaurant, but then also able to find a passion in creating. And they moved me in different parts of the business. I was in the field. I was making deliveries to job sites. So that kind of like, not knowing it, but I was understanding like job site laydown area and points of entry for the gates, and chain of command. Who do I talk to? Who don't I talk to? And then over time in the field, pulling wire, installing light fixtures, and so I really got my hands on the material that I was just a year or two before was managing the material in the warehouse, moving it around, but I had no context of it. Now in the field, I have context of, oh, this is a fitting that goes together, and oh, this is what a connector, and the wire goes through this, and how, so often it's so easy to like walk into your room at your house, just flip the switch on. It's, we think it's like magic that that boom, we have light. But understanding like the engineering behind, like there's a specific wire size that goes to that light because of a certain equation, and really figuring out like the why behind the buildings are built. And in 2009, 2010, we had a couple of different contracts at the New Orleans Veterans Affairs Hospital, and it's $1 billion hospital right there in mid city. There's going to be a huge development for the city and for the surrounding areas. Really breathing a life into mid city. And also across the street was the LSU Medical Center, $1 billion hospital. So you had like two projects right across the street from each other. One's publicly funded, one's privately funded, and we had contracts at both. And the LSU Medical Center was a SCASCA project, and the VA hospital was a joint venture with McCarthy. And they called us up and said, "Hey, where's your BIM person?" And we're like, "What's BIM?" And this is 2009 or 10, and they're like, "Well, you need to figure it out because they need to be on our weekly coordination calls." And we're like, "Okay." And they looked at me and they're like, "Trevor, you're pretty good with our phones and computers and emails and stuff. Why don't you do this BIM thing?" And at first I said, "Nah, I'm in college. I'm like part-time still in college." I think I was a junior or a senior, and then I did some research, just Googling what BIM was, and I saw bits and pieces from different companies that have been doing it for just a little while, and it looked pretty cool. It looked like video games, and I liked video games, and I said, okay, we'll give it a try. And we literally Googled Revit training in New Orleans, and there was a guy, Ken Colgan. I referred to him as like the Revit Jedi, because at the time, like, there was no school on Revit, there was no school on Navisworks. You couldn't major in VDC or BIM or I mean, you had architectural design, but it was not in those programs. And so he was a architect for many years, fell in love with the software, and started training. So his office was right behind our office, and so he spent a week with me on how to draw light fixtures and conduit in Revit. And so my first project, I was drawing miles of cable tray and conduit throughout 10 different buildings, 2 million square feet hospital, and yeah, you learn a lot the hard way doing that. But I fell in love with it, and I told our VP, I said, I think we're on something here. The first couple of projects we were modeling and coordinating just because it was required by contract. But I said, I think we should do every project this way. It helps us plan better, helps our people in the field collaborate on what they're going to be installing, so it's not just a delegated design to them. It helps them take a sense of ownership, and it's not just some snotty-nosed kid running a computer saying, "Oh, you should build it this way," but it's them having a voice and a say into it, and in turn, the snotty-nosed kid is learning the constructability from that person. And so we did that, and we just went from there. We started modeling. I had a team of 3, and the approach was they would model, coordinate, detail their projects, and then they would also take the total station out to go lay out, because the theory was that they knew the project the best because they had been on it already for 6 months as it's physically coming out of the ground. And so they took the total station out. They already knew in their head the area, the conduit that's coming out of the ground, where it needs to be laid out. And then we also had a prefab shop that we started inside of our warehouse. So really, I was part of, like, kind of driver's or passenger seat of the innovation around BIM and prefab and digital layout in the early, that was 2011, 12, 13. And it was an awesome time. So I wouldn't be here. I know that's a long-winded answer around electrical contractor, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the opportunity that they provided. High-tech electric. We always joked because we're like, oh, we're so high-tech. And then spent 6 years at Hilti. I was looking for a change and a new challenge, and I was looking in different places. I was very specific at kind of like where I was applying to and who I was, taking the screening calls with. I know it sounds kind of like haughty or like thinking a lot of myself, but I had a good thing going at the contractor, so I didn't want to just up and leave for anyone. Funny enough, one of the screening calls that I took was with Katera. and they're like, when can you? We need you like in 3 days. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, I got a kid on the way. That I can't. I know I'm not moving that quick. But
Okay,
I was,
pause though, because I want to go back before we move
I'm
into
glad that
Hilti and
didn't
the
work
other
out.
part. I'll get you back into that too, but I'm really curious about that transition from, well, first of all, the creative stuff. I love that there's
Mhm.
some we have a lot in common there because I was actually studying construction management, but in college, but I was in bands, working on
Mhm.
websites, doing photography and video work,
Yeah.
and really just wanted to do that, but knew I'd probably be more successful financially if I did
Yeah.
something practical like construction management. My dad wanted me to be an engineer,
Hmm.
excuse me. And then, um, so I kept with it, but I totally agree with you about the value of being a creative person in this industry
Hmm.
because it does open you up to think about things differently. And but I wanted to dig into what you were saying about you went from BIM, I don't want to waste time on learning some new thing like to then like you're implementing it and I'm wondering it kind of sounds like you're noticing like its ability to do clash detection right away,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
this is going to save the client money, this is going to make my job easier, this is going to make coordination. The building is going to come together better. So you went pretty quickly from like, I don't even want to look into that to recommending to your own company, we should do this on every job.
Yeah.
Can you dig into like how that occurred in your mind? Like,
Yeah. I mean, and that thought was, and that jump was a span of maybe 3 years,
mm,
2 years. Um, we had I was the first ever like BIM person at that company. We had a CAD guy, Jack, and him and I worked together. And it was kind of we eased into it. Like he was doing CAD for a long time and it was working. But when we have in the specs that you have to use Revit and you also have to upload your latest model with your pay app to get paid, like that's the type of language we were dealing with for the first time ever. And so it was a little bit of uncharted territory. We're just kind of figuring out as we're going. And I was like, Jack, we can't be coordinating in Revit and exporting floor plans to CAD and doing shop drawings in CAD. Like we did that for one of the 9 buildings. And it was painful because, the model changes once a week, twice a week as you're doing coordination. Um, and so that workflow was very cumbersome because you would detail shop drawings and then like something would change. You have to re-export all over again, fit it in, scale it. So I was like, okay, the next one, we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off and we're going to start doing all of our detailing in Revit, no matter how like painful it is, but it's going to be better. So there was like lessons learned along the way, things we just kind of like had to, there was like birthing pains of being more and more bought into to this workflow. But I was also like, really interested in learning more from others. So like me, a structural engineer, Johan, he's now started his own company, Pace. Miles Martin started his architectural firm. Eddie Rivers, he's a GC at Tutorini. Like, there was Solus O'Brien had an engineer. I'm blanking on his name, but so there was like a collect, and there's a couple of guys from a GC called Broadmoor. Like, there was individuals, not companies, but individuals that really believe in the same thing. And so we came together. We started forming what was then called Rev Up. No, yeah, I think it was Art Rev Group or something. But then we changed it to be more holistic, and now it was NOLA BIM. Um, and we started like a kind of a little thought leadership group, and we were learning from each other. Hey, because this is before BIM 360. This is before collaboration for Revit, which we did have to figure out on our own as well. We were hosting models on a server. We were syncing and synchronizing to through a VPN. So we were like, it sounds like the Stone Age as you as I talk about it. Um, and but that we were figuring it out as we were going from with each other. Even though some might have been competition, but we were like, let's figure it out along the way. And then you know, going from it was like incremental further belief. Not just the more I believed in the workflow, the more I was able to show the value. or collect the value from the field, because they might be using it every day but not even realizing it. And so
Hmm.
I was able to, after coordinating, signing off an area, and then a couple of weeks later, I can go across the street and go to the job site. I can see the cable tray being installed exactly like we coordinated. Like, oh yes,
Hmm.
this is awesome. To go from theory to application of a design, with other people believing in this craziness is pretty cool. Feeling that's when it like really clicks. Is once you get away from the computer and you take your iPad or paper drawings out, and people are installing off of your drawing that has your initial off on it from a shop drawing, that you coordinated, and you're like, yep, I know that route, I know that route. And I was so bought in that like I was doing even some business development and didn't even know it, because like I had to learn other MEP systems in order to make recommendations during coordination for myself. You know, some might argue, but copper is much more expensive to navigate than air. So I had to learn the duck guys systems. Hey, can you flip the VA so I can have clear access and straight routes? Can you flatten your duct going under this beam more? So I was like taking the mechanical contractor out for a beer after work. Like, hey man, like this 1 quarter, I need you to like help me out, you know? So I was doing like horse trading on the side to like help, but I knew 4 to 6 months later, like that would pay off because it would have a better route. And then, so over time, I was able to see that, this is really like helping us work better. So why would we do anything different? Traditional methods, big or small projects, even if it's small, let's take the design models. Let's take even the 2D CAD or the PDFs and put them into CAD to build off of that. So we were really pushing the limits for a South Louisiana electrical contractor. We were putting owners in VR. Like I had an Oculus Rift, and we were putting owners in VR and helping them make decisions. I was helping win projects for GCs and architects, using Lumion, and Revit. And so it's really like they allow me to have a creative outlet to do more than just sit there and be a CAD monkey. But hey, let's like help the business, like let's help us build better, and let's help find ways and using technology, in ways we've never done work before. Like 2016, I bought a Phantom 4 personally and was flying the Phantom 4 on job sites. And so it was really like anything that had to do with technology, I was trying to find a way that we could reuse it to help us build better.
Yeah. I bought the
So again,
original
it's a long-winded
Phantom,
answer.
by
I
the way.
apologize.
Oh no, I love your answers. I love them being long. Yeah, I bought one of those original Phantoms and it would like fall out of the sky and I would be like trying to solder parts back together.
Yeah.
So now to have like a really nice Mavic is such a
Mhm.
different animal because they're reliable. Like I just like send it wherever I want. Don't worry about it. But back then it was like I
Mhm.
don't want to fly this thing over water because it might just drop out of the sky, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but interesting. So let's continue a little bit to get
Mhm.
you to where you are now. So Katera pinged you a little bit. It was too short
Itera,
notice for you, and then you
yeah.
ended up at Hilti, right?
There's a couple of general contractors, J.D. Dunn, Brassfield and Gorey, and then Hilti. And I was like, well, Hilti sounds interesting. Like I've done the contractor thing. A GC would be different, but still like in the contractor project dependent world. Um, Now Hilti would be different. I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool. I know Hilti for like consumables and tools, and but I've never heard of Hilti for this BIM thing. And so I applied, and yeah, just kept getting shortlisted, and went out there, did an interview, and they called me the week that my daughter was being born, and they were like, hey, like if we believe like you're the right candidate, like we'll wait for you. And I was like, oh wow, that's amazing, for that type of response and that type of culture. And so, but long story short, yeah, I was the first ever BIM product manager at Hilti, and I was the voice of the customer for North America and Canada, and I was a part of a global team that I had counterparts in other countries and also at the headquarters there in Liechtenstein. And so, yeah, as a team, we put together services that were localized to the different markets, that brought value to project teams through focusing on fire stopping applications first in the North American market, and then going from there to multi-trade racking and modular design. So that was a really neat experience. I still have a lot of friends there. Learned so much. I actually learned. I'm using a lot of what I learned at Rogers Obrien through my experiences there.
What
And
about
then
Hilti?
eventually,
Were they doing anything different with BIM? It sounds like you were kind of helping them create a BIM department, but like, did they have a different approach to technology in general than you had experienced in the past?
it was very self-serve, so they did have a BIM library, a CAD library. They had a plugin that you could buy and install, and it would do some automation for you. And when I first joined, I was there based on my experience, to breathe kind of life into that plugin, as far as like working with the development team and the product expert who had already been using and demoing the software, Mike Herndon. I say his name because him and I, once we saw that we couldn't even give the plugin away, we pivoted and said, you know what, because I was doing customer sensing, cold calling, I was visiting customers in the markets. I'm like, hey, what would make this better? What would make this like you want to install it and use it now? And based on all the phone calls and visits, every conversation led to them saying, I'm too busy. It's another software I have to subscribe to, something it's kind of technical, so I have to learn it or train someone on it. But they're like, can you just do it for me? And I'm like, we're not set up for that. But everyone kept asking, can you just do it for me? And so this customer, Philly D&M, it's an interior drywall company in Philadelphia. They were on a project, the Penn First Medical Tower, large hospital in downtown Philly. And they said, hey, it's in our contract to model things in Revit, even the fire stopping for all the penetrations go through our walls. We're like, great, we have a solution for you. And they're like, no, can you just do it for us? Like, oh, okay. So I go up to Philly, we do some whiteboarding, like setting expectations, what do you need as far as an output if we were to do this for you? They're like, well, I'm like, well, shop drawings. They're like, oh yes, drawings would help. I'm like, okay, to what, level of development or level of detail are you needing? So we kind of like scope this thing out and we're like, okay, we'll do it for you. And so it's me and Mike Herndon, like project managing and executing the modeling and detailing for this customer. And it went from there, and it was kind of like a deja vu. We're like, we should do this. We should like create a real service and market around it. And so, yeah, we started winning projects, and Mike and I were winning projects and executing projects for big general contractors and trade contractors. And the projects we were working on were not, $50 million, $100 million jobs. These were $1 billion+ jobs that we were working on. So we got a lot of experience there. And now they do have, have a full engineering team and project management team and modeling team dedicated to these sets of services. And, we went from $0 a year to, that was 6 years ago, to now they're doing, several $1 million a year and just service revenue. And then the hardware pull through is on top of that. Because once it's modeled and it's on the shop drawings and they're providing bills of material, they're gonna, we were turning those into quotes, and they were buying from the model. So it was really a neat experience.
Maybe you can get into here before, I don't know if Hilti and then RO, if there's more that we need to discuss before then, but we can get into that too. But can you discuss like how reality capture started to integrate with BIM, and what was the beginnings of that? Like, did you see immediately, like, we need to capture this data, the photogrammetry, or I don't know if LiDAR was around back then, but it was probably just like, we need to take video and pictures of this.
Yeah.
How did you know it would integrate or it would help with BIM, or did it?
So more reality capture goes back to my electrical contractor days. I always had a passion for connecting the real world to the model. Like we were the first one we had like 4 or 5 different offices. We're the first one to do BIM. We're the first one to have a total station. And So we got a total station, and we're like, what can we do? What can we do with this? Let's put it to the test. And so we were shooting control points, shooting points to be laid out in the field based on stuff we've modeled. And then we're like, well, what if we could collect points? And so I did a project for the St. Joseph Abbey in Covington, Louisiana, that had just got hit by a hurricane. They wanted to put a generator there for the monks' dormitories, and they're like, we don't have any as-built because like Hurricane Katrina like wiped out, like we have no paper documents. So I'm like, okay, no worry. No worries. So I pull out the total station. I just shot like the corner of a roof, the edge of a fire hydrant, some like random locations, and just to collect points that I knew would still be there in a few days that weren't going anywhere. And so I brought those points into Revit. I flew my drone to get kind of a photogrammetry concept, like reference to those points that I shot. And then we drew in, based on the submittal, the generator, the automatic transfer switch, the conduit going between the building and the generator pad. We had to find out what's the window that our conduits have to hit. Is it even going to fit? And then once we got it all modeled and laid out, we actually went out. I think it was like 3 days. We went from showed up on the site to putting these flags in the ground, sticking it where the generator is going to go. And we shot with the total station. We shot the points for the 4 corners of the generator, and we had to get the owner to come and bless it. Like, is this location for this big generator good? And he saw little pink flags in the ground and goes, "Yep, that's good." So no tape measures, no drawings. In 3 days, we used a drone, Revit, and total station to accomplish this workflow. So that was another kind of like, oh wow, this is like doable. And using the drone for photogrammetry, using the total station to collect real world points. We also got a Matterport in like 2016 that we were using to close out projects. So instead of turning over like a big binder of submittal and a thumb drive of like PDFs, we said, let's just come scan the electrical room, and then we'll embed the PDF inside of that. So it's just a hyperlink we send you. And we're like, and owners were like, oh yes, you can do that. So those, I was always trying to find elements of reality capture to include it as a part of the workflow, but never did we have like a full strategy dedicated just to reality capture, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when I got the call in January from Chris Patton, he said, "Hey, Todd and I were talking, and we think we have something that you'd be a great fit for. Like, what do you think about reality capture?" I'm like, I love reality capture. Like, I've always had a real knack for it. I've always been drawn to it. And so then we went, got to talking and about the opportunity and where RO is going. And so here I am. And I head up the team and the strategy and kind of evolution of reality capture at RO. And it's really, it's kind of like that feeling again at the early days of BIM at the electrical contractor, the early days of BIM at Hilti, and now it's kind of it's like an internal startup feeling again. And what's cool is we're seeing the adoption of our operations team. I'm approaching them as like our internal customer. We're an internal startup and we're a solutions provider, and we have to go sell our product to our internal customers. And we're really harping on selling the value versus the cost. And which is hard. That's challenging. To not be a shiny object, but to really be a tool to bring value, to increase productivity, reduce the risk of safety, reduce risk, period. And so we've been using technology to do those things, and we're seeing adoption across the board, which is really, really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah. It sounds like too, I loved that your story kind of started with a client asking you, like, you guys need to do BIM. It sounded like that's the way it started. I'm hoping that clients are going to start understanding, or just projects in general are going to see the value in reality capture, and it will be a requirement just like everything else. But talk about that, like what hurdles are you running into with kind of explaining the value of this, and how do you see it in the future?
I would say it's challenging, but not as challenging as the showing the value of BIM and VDC, because there it's intangible. It's on the computer, so you're working with someone's their basis of knowledge and experience by pulling up something that's intangible to show them and unpack the value of something they can't hold. On reality capture, we have a little bit more of a leg up because, hey, here's the scanner. Let's touch and feel it. Let's scan something. Let's show the tablet. Let's fly the drone. So there's this tactile things that make the connection a little bit easier of the technology to the value. And some of the things we're doing is whether it's pilots, like piloting the service. Hey, let's go scan one room. Let's go scan this area. And so that way they have a tangible example and it's personal. Let's go scan your project, not like, let me show you a demo project. But let's go on site, scan your, corner of the building. And then let's show you kind of the value of what we can bring. They're like, and as soon as we do that and show them, hey, now you could have as-builts that live on forever because they're on the cloud. And no one's pulling out tape measures. It's reliable. You remove the human element from it, and we're trusting in technology to do the work for us. And so when we start to unpack, the value, the use cases, and the value that they care about, that's where we start to see the adoption. Because then when they see like the stuff, the technology is not cheap. So when they start to see the price of investment, the price to get it done. Now they're looking at it from a different perspective of, oh, like I don't have to have someone tied up for a week measuring with a tape measure or a laser tape and hand sketching and turning that into 2D AutoCAD. It's like such an archaic workflow, but people are safe with that workflow because we're doing it for so many years. And when they see the price, it's going to be cheaper. But the cost of doing that is not cheaper because you're tying up someone for 2 weeks doing measurements and detailing where they could be doing something else. So it's the cost of not doing productive work that's really a detriment. But when we say, let's come out and scan your project, it's in another city, and we'll have you a registered colorized scan on the cloud in 2 days, their minds are blown. They're like, you could do that? Yeah, let's do it. And so what we're doing from a strategy standpoint is the scanning is really amazing. The drone capture is really awesome, using propeller to do cut fill analysis, topography, and really partnering with our field engineering team. So now we're trying to use reality capture as not just a silo, like it's not tied to our team, but how do we use the data to partner with other departments, VDC, field engineering, operations, pre-construction team, marketing. So how do we unpack value from maybe the same laser scan, but everyone's using it for the personas involved are using it for different things. And then from a strategy standpoint, we don't want the technology and the hardware to dictate where people go to access the data. Meaning like, oh, if you want a laser scan, go here. If you want drone data, go here. If you want 360 capture, go here. We're trying to have the interoperability and more of an ecosystem, and across all the different technologies, because that'll make it even more easier and drive adoption. If we can make it easy and accessible, then people are going to use it. But it's got to bring value. It can't be. It can be easy and accessible, but if it's not maintained, we're also looking at ourselves like customer success managers. Okay, someone showed engagement. They have 360 photo capture on their project. We're going to go out there once a week now and check in with them. Hey man, how's it going? Let's show you some new tips and tricks in the software, because now you're kind of a beginner, a novice. Like, let's show you maybe some additional features that you can use. So again, we're like internal salespeople trying to reduce churn of our internal customers by increasing adoption. Because by doing so, when we talk about the technology and these software and hardware to fellow team members, when they hear from us, they're going to hear from us as like, oh, well, you might want validation of your team. You want like validation of the stuff you've invested in. But what I want, I want project manager talking to project manager. I want, PE talking to a QM. I want the different people or different customers using this technology who are benefiting from it to talk to each other. Because when you have that and they're like marketing marketing for you, then that's when you're going to see kind of a hockey stick curve of adoption, because they're like, no, like we cannot work without this technology. I heard someone say, like, because the structural design model was kind of iffy, come to find out, which we didn't know until we scanned it. And we scanned it, and like, we could not have done this project without the laser scan. Which is also scary. That's the type of like data that we're getting from early on these design teams, but the scan that validates the scan that we've done. Because I was talking to the VDC lead for that project. I'm like, what would have happened if you would have signed off this area, and now you have your plumber fabricating, the duct contractor fabricating, stuff is showing up on site and they're going to install, but you got to call them 2 feet off. Like, what are you going to, how would you accomplish that in the field? Well, there would have been delays, rework. And so,
yeah, you're talking about one of the biggest problems in our industry, rework. I mean, what do they say? It's a huge percentage of our costs in construction. I want to get into the philosophy a little bit. Can we talk philosophy? Because
yeah, I've had a couple cups of coffee, so I'm good to go.
Yeah, I think that and we could go on for hours. I'm already thinking we need to do a part 2 where we do some practical, maybe get to see some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I do want to save that for another episode, because I just want to talk about the philosophy of why would we do this. It sounds like you're getting at it already. We don't like implement tech just because it's sexy and shiny. It's actually solving real world problems, and it's making people's lives easier, or that's the goal, I think, for you and myself as well. But can you talk about those experiences that like how is technology actually cutting costs in construction, making our product better, making it cheaper for the client, making it easier to produce on a schedule?
No, that's a great question. And sometimes I've seen the adoption go from, I don't know if that's for me, to someone telling me that they grew up without a TV and now they want us to scan every part of their project, because the pendulum swing, when they see the inkling of the value, it goes, woof, scan everything. And it's amazing to see that adoption happen. Or we've seen where they're doing 360 photo capture. Like, we've been using Cubics on a few projects, and Cubics has like, the base model of Cubics site view. And then they have the like AI progress tracking called Site Insights, and which is an added cost. And what we've seen happen is kind of this like land and expand model. Like, we'll see a project manager say, I just want to do photo capture. Like, that's all I'm required to do per the specs. And so we'll set them up, train them, and then we're like, hey, we have this other project that's leveraging this progress tracking. Like, what do you think about that? And he goes, oh wow, this would really help me on my projects. Because he said today, it's like based on my experience to do the weekly schedule updates. He said this would help me. He said I would still validate it, of course, but now it's not just relying on me. He said also it would help me with pay apps. Like, now I would know like where trades are at. I would have a better idea where we're at. And so he said, yeah, let's do it. And so it went from just the basic, to plan of Cubics site view to now he's added on to his contract for Site Insights. But again, it's that, I take what I've been doing with my team is it's easy for us who are in tech to see the solution like off in the distance. And when we get excited about that solution and we try and communicate it to someone in the field, they're like, whoa, I do not want AI robot dogs walking around pushing data to Cubics every day, because field AI can do that. But when I have a PM who like is so used to taking photos with an iPad, we have to define the customer journey. If I want them to get here, there's about 5 steps along the way to get them to that point. Because is that a good solution? Yeah, probably for the right size project, that's a great solution. But to get them from taking photos with their iPad to then a 360 camera to then interacting with the platform that the 360 camera is pushing data to, and then once they start doing 1 to 3 captures a week, I'm like, then I can open the conversation with, what if you didn't have to do that capture? What if
Yeah.
it was done for you? And so it's unpacking the value, but you're meeting them where they're at. And so that's where I'm taking a lot of the product manager experience from Hilti when it comes to identifying your persona type. What's their pain points? What kind of value do they perceive? And then identifying the customer journey of let's meet with the technology of where they're at, where they're used to working. Um, if someone says I grew up without a TV, okay, they're used to a tape measure. What technology do we have that we can show them the value of a digital tape measure? So it's really unpacking the value of the technology based on that person, that specific person, the individual.
And breaking it up into kind of smaller steps. I really like that too, because once you get them taking one step, it becomes easier and easier, and then you see the value immediately.
Exactly.
Then
Yeah, we're looking at each project as like a mini small business, and the PM is like a CEO, and the CEO is very protective of their small business. And when we come in and show them the scanner and the drones, it can be a little off-putting, but when we come in there, we want to partner with them. When they call us up and say, "Hey, I have a problem," like, or have you heard about this thing? I need a solution. We'll go out there. So when someone shows a little bit of engagement, we're on site. We're in the trailer. We're walking the job. We're getting our boots dirty.
and the thing about those people too, that maybe they're trying to say to you, I grew up without a TV, might be another way of saying, I don't even want to be looking at this iPad. So I have to take pictures of it. And now you say I got to use robots. And what you're actually saying to them is, I can get you off of that iPad. And I think that's true even for someone like me, and probably you as well. I enjoy computers. I've spent a lot of time around video games and computers, but I
Yeah.
also want to get away from the screen.
Mhm.
And I think this is one of the ways to do it is like AI, reality capture, BIM. I think it will get us back to the field a little more. Do you agree?
Yes, and that is what we're really trying to do. Is we're trying to allow our people to not have a bunch of windshield time. The people who are most experienced to have 20, 30 years of experience to not be running around managing 8 or 10 projects, but driving around. And the more seasoned they are, they don't need to be on a pan deck in the summer heat of Texas. And so what we're aiming to do, their experience, their core, their tacit knowledge, Todd talks about tacit knowledge, the stuff that you learn on the job, not book smart, but the street smart of construction that they know. How do we retain that? And so in the next couple of years, what we're aiming for is called the RO Command Center. And that's where these experienced general superintendents, project directors can sit in like in a command center, let you see in like SpaceX or NASA's with the clumps of desks for the different people responsible for different aspects of the launch. But think of those clumps of desks as general superintendent, project director, remote drone pilot, and the back row could be your support services. And so now they're managing 20 or 30 projects virtually and remotely. They don't need to be there physically because what they're bringing to the table is their experience.
Yeah.
And if we can allow them to tap into that experience, but putting in front of them the information they need, which is a live feed camera, maybe some blinky lights, these status indicators of when a project is about to go off the rails because what's modeled and what's the schedule saying supposed to be installed is not installed yet. So we have an indicator going off. And maybe having someone teleoperate some robots, remote fly drones on a pre-planned path using the Dock 2 on all of our job trailers. Like that's doable today with the technology. And so that's what we're aiming for. It's almost like, I said it to someone yesterday, it's almost like construction customer service. Like you have this team that's really experienced, but maybe less experienced in the field building, but they can tap into the builder's network and see, hey, how do we build better? Or, that doesn't mean that the people in the command center can't go to the job site, but of course they go to the job site, but now they know exactly what floor they're going to, what area they're going to. So that's kind of like what we're aiming for through our technology and through our workflow is how do we aim for retaining of this experience in a centralized location, and maybe even have like the job trailers be an extension of the command center. Maybe there's a mini command center at each job trailer.
Love that.
And me and my team, we're setting up the infrastructure to do that, whether it's through scanning, cameras, sensors. This is kind of like where we're starting and where we're headed.
Beautiful. I think that really is going to solve a lot of, I mean, and you guys are taking the right approach. This is why I keep following RO so closely is you're not just implementing technology for the sake of implementing it. We're trying to allow, first of all, retain that knowledge. I love that because that's one of the biggest risks I see for construction industry in the future is we're going to lose all these people who have spent their whole lives like actually building buildings. All that knowledge is going to go out the door if we don't capture it.
Yeah, they'll be driving Uber or greeting at Walmart, where they're physically, maybe physically they might be challenged to get up to the 32nd floor of a tower, but mentally they still have all that experience, that master electrician knowledge, that builder experience that we need to tap into. And so if we can have an environment that's inviting to that type of lifestyle, to where they don't physically need to be there, but mentally they can add value. That's what really drew me to this position at RO is because of that belief that, we talk about the silver tsunami that's happening and of retirement, or people coming out of retirement to come back to work and throwing money at them. But that's not sustainable. That's putting your finger in the hole of the sinking ship, and we need a new ship. And that's what we're really RO is tackling it from a different angle. That's why we have the roads on the side of the bumps on the side of the road. They know we're going to text and drive. They just have an environment now to get you off your phone when you start to go off the road a little bit.
Yeah.
And so if we can have an environment that's allowing us to not like combat the labor shortage or the experienced worker retirement, but have an environment to where it's like, we're going to like reverse engineer this. What if there is now a job path for you? Not like, please don't leave, but no, actually after you've, there's a place for you after you've been a general superintendent. And now you can go add value in the command center, which is awesome. That's an amazing like way of, it's a better lifestyle choice, I believe.
Yeah, it gets them the ability to not have to travel around to project. They could be managing, like you said, 100 different projects from one location. Go home to your family, be with your kids at night. Don't worry about all the travel. That's beautiful. And I do really, I'm gonna ping you for a part 2 here, so I hope you get to. But thanks for coming on, man. I wish we could talk for hours and hours.
For sure, I appreciate the time, the opportunity. Thanks for Todd for putting my name out there, and he's great with his leadership. We're really aiming to do some really amazing things here at RO.
Perfect. Have a good one.
Thanks, Seth. Have a great one. Merry Christmas.